Well, welcome back everybody to Pooley Mag TV, the raw, unedited, unscripted NUFC fan channel where everybody's got an opinion and nobody's opinion's wrong. So today is just a little bit of a different one. You know, I do talk about my personal journey as a football fan and as a Newcastle fan. And I've done my first time at St James's Park. I've done my first match as a kid. So tonight I'm going to bring you my first away game. So the first away game I think was the 2004, 2005 season where it was against Middlesbrough at the Riverside Stadium. My dad got free tickets, so we had to sit in the Middlesbrough end, which which wasn't great. You know, we didn't cheer when they scored. We certainly didn't cheer when we scored. You know, we finished 2-2. Kieran Dyer should have won it. Right at the end, it was the match that really got Bobby Robson the sack. But I just remember I'd been to St James's Park at this point, and I'd been to obviously Hartlepool's ground fair amount of times, you know, and Middlesbrough's ground. It's a big ground. I'd been to Middlesbrough loads of times, shopping and things like that. So I'd seen the Riverside Stadium, and when you got in there, it's quite an impressive stadium. I'm not going to deny it, but it just didn't have that same energy as what a St James's Park had, or even the same energy as what Pools had when they were flying and getting into late playoff finals and that. The Middlesbrough crowd was quite dying, to be fair. They only had one chant, da 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 da, up the bar. That was the only thing they sang all game. And I think we were meant to be in the loudest part of the stadium and all, and I kept saying to my dad, it's nothing like St James's Park, this is it. And he kept saying, no, son, there's not many places that are. And he was right. He was right about that. St James's Park is a special ground, and the Riverside Stadium just doesn't hold a candle to it. Don't get me wrong, it was a good stadium for better, but for me, it just didn't have that same oomph, that same atmosphere as what a St James's Park had. The game itself was an end-to-end game. It was a good game. Like I say, we should have won it. And it was the game, I think, that ultimately cost Bobby Robson his job. I think it was the same game where he got questioned about Wayne Rooney and he didn't have a clue about it, which was a shame, really. And we ended up going on to getting Graham Souness, but that's another video for another time. So I just remember the morning, my dad got free tickets off work, so we were going with his pal from work. And it was just, we went there, we went for some scran, and I was excited. I'd never been to an away ground before. I'd only ever been to Pools and Newcastle, and obviously they're two home grounds for me. So I'd never been to an away ground, and obviously, like I say, we were in the home end, so we couldn't really be with the Newcastle fans. But the fact that I got to see Newcastle live at the Middlesbrough Stadium was great. It was a great experience. Like I say, we couldn't really cheer when we wanted to, and we didn't cheer when they scored, so we must have stood out like sore thumbs, really. I had a Newcastle shirt on underneath. My dad told me under no circumstances to unveil that Newcastle top, because there would have been a lot, I think. I was 14, 15 at the time, and I was quite a nuisance. So I was tempted to, but I never did. I probably would have these days after a few drinks, but I didn't drink back then. I didn't have a pint in me back then. If I'd have had a pint in me, God knows what would have happened. But I just remember, I think we'd signed Stephen Card and Nicky Butt that summer, and I was looking forward to the match, and it didn't disappoint. It wasn't the best match I've ever seen, but it wasn't a bad match either. But I just remember thinking Middlesbrough's ground, although it's like a biggish ground, the atmosphere was terrible, really. It was non-existent. And there was no chant other than that up the border chant, and the fans just seemed disinterested, and I just didn't get it. I thought you're watching a Premier League team and you're watching them versus your North East rivals, and there was just no atmosphere. Now, I've never been to a North East derby at Sunderland, but I can imagine the Sunderland crowd being fantastic, shouting and abusing the Newcastle fans and shouting and abusing the Newcastle players as the home team should do. Middlesbrough were quiet, they were boring. It took away the luster of the game for me, really. You know, the fact that we should have won the game and all wasn't great, and the whole experience was a bit of a damp squib, if I'm honest. I was really looking forward to going to a different ground, and I was really looking forward to going to an away ground, and obviously Middlesbrough is only up the road from Hartlepool, where I'm from, so it wasn't like a long travel. It was exciting. Obviously my dad was going, Malcolm, his friend, was going, who was a Middlesbrough fan but lived in Newcastle, so there was quite a little bit of a jibe. There was more jibes going between Malcolm and my dad and myself than there was in the whole ground. I just didn't understand it. I just didn't get it. I just thought, well, if I was at Pools against Darlington, which is Pools' rivals, the atmosphere would have been rocking and it would have been electric. Now, I know Middlesbrough and Newcastle aren't the rivals that Sunderland and Newcastle are, but still, you would expect a little bit more than what the Middlesbrough fans gave us. And I just didn't rate going to the Riverside Stadium. I've never been back. I've been for works events and things like that, but I've never been to watch a match again at the Riverside Stadium because it just put me off. I thought this is one of your biggest games of the season by a country mile, and the crowd was terrible. They hardly had anybody there, to be fair. You know, Middlesbrough don't have a well-supported team at home. I think they've got a good team support away from home, but at home it's dreadful. It was like half a stadium, and it was just a terrible atmosphere. But anyway, it was 2-2, and it was an unfortunate game because, like I say, I think it's the game that really cost Bobby Robson, my hero growing up, his job at Newcastle. But it wasn't the away game that I thought it was going to be, you know, and I wish it was better. I wish the atmosphere was better. And I'm not just knocking on Middlesbrough. If Middlesbrough's ground was as raucous as Newcastle's, I would say so. I have no reason to lie. It was 20 odd years ago now. I have no reason to lie about it. I'm not trying to mock Middlesbrough. I can guarantee about 3 people watch this video all the way through anyway. But I'm just letting everybody know that that was my first experience of an away match, and it was a little bit lacklustre, if I'm honest. So if anybody does get to this point of the video, what was your first away match? And was it as exciting? What was their crowd like? What was the stadium like? Was it as good as a home game? Obviously, it's not sometimes not going to be as good as a home game, but what was your overall experience? Because mine was not what I thought it was going to be in the slightest. And Middlesbrough let me down that day, really. The crowd let me down, and it was just a bit boring, if I'm honest. So hit like, share the channel, please, because, you know, I don't beg for people to share the channel, but I think, as you can see, I'm just a humble guy who has footballing knowledge, you know, and just has an opinion. He's got over 30 years of footballing knowledge, you know, and been a fan for over 30 years now. So I think it'd be a good place for people to come and crack on and have a safe community where people can just have a crack on and just vent without anybody being, you know, over their shoulder, looking over their shoulder and being judgmental. So that's it from me. What was your first away match? What was the score? Who was it against? And what was the crowd like? Keep it black and white. Keep it Pooley Mag TV. Over and out.